Hey, what's up guys, it's JamieBot. In this video I'm going to show you something pretty cool. It's like a template I figured out for Firestore Rules to make a minimally viable set of security rules for your Firebase Firestore database. And this will just allow your app to be more secure and help you sleep better at night. Like, this template won't work for all apps, like some apps need something more complicated, but it'll definitely be good for a lot of the starting apps where you're just testing ideas out. So let's get into it. Okay, so first off, if you haven't seen my video on how to set up Angular Fire 2, be sure to check that out. With that said, I'm just going to be going over here into an existing project I have, and then going to rules. So right now the rules are very not secure, so I'm going to go ahead and replace those with the secure template that I mentioned. So basically what this template is going to do is allow us to only read and create data if we're logged in. So that means that you have to sign in, albeit we're going to use anonymous sign-ins. We'll talk about that in a second, but basically the app has to know who you are in order to read or create data. And it's only going to allow update if the resource does not exist and you're logged in. So that last part might sound a little funky, but basically, like some operations in Firestore, it thinks it's an update even though it's really doing a create. So I added this third line to make sure that you can call those operations when you're really creating a new object. Like if you call set, then it thinks you're doing an update, but you're really doing a create. So I added this third rule to allow for operations like that. So basically you can read and create items, and that's it. So obviously this isn't going to work for all apps, because in some apps you will need to delete data and update data. But for apps where you're just like testing out the structure, you can sort of create an MVP, allow users to upload new information, and then just disallow any deleting or updating of data so that users can't mess with each other's data. So basically, once you post data to the service, it's on the service, and then you as the admin can monitor that data, and then the users can't mess with each other's data. So it's like a very minimally functional set of rules for apps that are just getting started. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and publish those changes. And now let's go test those changes out. Okay, so right now I have this app which I did in my hello world for Firebase functions. So it basically is just a single button. And when you click that button, it logs go and inserts some data into the items collection within the database. But to make sure our new rules work, I'm going to change the functionality of this app to make it so that each user will have a status in like a status collection. So I'm going to change the collection to be status. And instead of add, I'm going to have it be set. So this is the operation that I was telling you about where it thinks it's going to be an update, but if it doesn't exist, it's really a create. So this is what that's for, is for operations like set, where it gets confused. It thinks it's an update, but it's really a create. Alright, inside of my app module file, I'm going to import the Angular Fire auth module and import it down here as well. And that's just so that we can inject it here. Okay, now that we have the auth module, I'm going to go and declare a function that will set up the authentication. And like I said, this is just going to be anonymous authentication. So as soon as you open the app in the browser, it'll basically assign you an ID, and then that ID will follow you around unless you are incognito. Then as soon as you go out of incognito, that ID will be disassociated with you, or if you're not incognito, if you're just in a regular browser in a regular tab, basically that ID will stick around with you as long as you don't clear your cache and you're on the same device. Looks like I accidentally imported the auth module, so I want to do Angular Fire auth, not Angular Fire auth module. Okay, so we have our setup auth function, and I'm just going to call that in the constructor. So I'm going to call this .setup auth. Okay, and let me explain what that does. Basically, it says Angular Fire auth, I want to be notified when the auth state changes. So initially, this afauth.auth.currentuser, that's going to be undefined or null. And so it'll go into the second statement where it says performing anonymous sign in, and then it will call sign in anonymously. And then as soon as it does sign you in, then this current user object will then be populated with all that info, like the ID, and that's pretty much one of the only things we could possibly know about the user. But basically we have a user identifier now, and then immediately it'll be called again because the auth state has changed, and then it will say you're signed in. So it's gonna sign in and then say you're signed in. And then if you refresh the page, it'll just say you're already signed in because it'll remember in the cookies. Now the reason that we were doing that is because down here when we're calling the go function, we want to set the status of an individual user to something, so we need something to identify the user. Okay, so that's the identifier we have for them. Okay, now the first time we do this, it'll work, but then subsequent times, if our rules are working, it should not work because we disallow updates to objects which already exist. We actually have this error right now that says that the given sign-in provider is disabled, and that's because I forgot to set up the sign-in method. So here in Firebase Authentication, I need to go down to Anonymous and click Enable and click Save. Okay, so now when we reload the page, it says performing anonymous sign-in, and then it says you're signed in. So great, now we have a user ID, and then when we click Go, it should write that object to the database. So we'll go check that out. So we'll go over here in the database. We'll go over here to status, and then this right here is the user ID, JLZHD, etc. And then if we go over to authentication, we can actually see that anonymous user is here with that same user ID, just like we would expect. Okay, then according to our rules, like I was saying earlier, update is only allowed if the object doesn't exist. So it only allows reads and creates, so it should not allow us to update that object. So if I click Go again, it'll try to update that object, and we should get a permission error. So there it is, there's our permission error. And just to prove that this works with other users, I'm going to go back to localhost 4200 and try it again. This time we should have a different user, so I'm going to click Go. And then we'll go and check inside of our database for additional objects. And there we are, there's our additional object, 309, so that was just barely. And then if I try and click again, we'll get that permissions error. Okay, so that is my quick and dirty solution to new apps needing basic security. Again, this won't work for all apps, but it's pretty great for exploring new ideas. It has the benefit of having anonymous authentication, so you don't need to burden users with having to sign in with Google or Facebook, or even create their own account with you and verify the email, so it's a lot simpler. And it protects users' data from each other because no one can modify the data except you as the admin. And then finally, it's just super easy to set up. It's literally 3 lines of code right here. So yeah, let me know if you guys like this video. I think it's a super useful way to get a lot done with a little amount of code. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Be sure to leave a comment with any questions you have. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.